Hi, this is Ben Ivey, the fulfillment artist. And in this video, I'm going to teach you why achievers crash and burn. So isn't it interesting that sometimes you watch someone who's doing incredibly well in business. They're setting everything up, everything's going really, really well, and then suddenly they lose everything. Like, why is that? What is it that gets someone to be a billionaire and then suddenly all these things go wrong? Or even just like setting up a business, like why is it that these people crash and burn? And it may not just be in business. Why is it that even in perhaps athletics, like these other things where you see these top people just suddenly move down? What happened was I've identified 5 things. And these 5 things, if you're an achiever, will really help you understand how best to avoid these sorts of things. So the first thing is that the expectations that they set for themselves are too high. And they're unrealistic because often the reason that they're a high achiever is they set these high expectations so they really achieve, and that's good in some circumstances. But what happens is they set a really high goal. Okay, so let's say the goal's here. They get that and they're like, okay, now what? And they go to the next one. And they achieve that and they're like, okay, that's great, now what? And let's say their goal is, I don't know, 1 million, and they get 900,000. They will literally be so hard on themselves. Like, how could I do that? How could I fail? How could I fail like that? And it's fascinating because in their mind, they have failed beyond anything because these expectations are so high. So instead, it's looking into the systems that you can control instead of everything that's outside of your control and setting up these huge expectations that no one could possibly fulfill. So even if they're doing well for the first 2 years, at that point where they don't achieve it, they'll feel, oh, well, no, I just feel crap. And if that doesn't work, well, the second one will. So the second point is the self-sabotage. Now, there's a variety of reasons why people self-sabotage when it comes to success. One of the most important ones is them not feeling worthy. So what do I mean by this? Sometimes in life, when people get to a certain status, they then feel that they're not worthy of that status. So they will self-sabotage themselves to then go back to what they were previously. So imagine they suddenly get promoted to a manager, or they get promoted and they're doing really well. They're at this new position. Let's just say that they're a director. They're like, well, wow, I never thought I could be a director. And people before in your life may have said, oh, you could never be a director because you always make silly mistakes. They could have said that when you were younger. Now, you're not aware of this, but what happens is when you get to that position, you will then create behaviors to reinforce that. So you will make silly mistakes at work. Another thing is that within your peer group that you have, if you start moving forward, you may feel that you're losing out on them because you have less to connect them with. So this is why often people's friendships change, and this is why one of the fastest ways to influence yourself is to change the environment and the people that you're with. Because if you do this, you're going to be influenced in a very different way. So let's give an example of all these guys are employees in a company. And one guy goes to set up a business. He's doing really well and he comes back. Now this guy, let's call him Fred. Okay, so Fred's here, he's got his business now. He's talking about, oh, I'm going to maybe doing invest in this, invest in that, and he will feel no longer part of the group. So what may happen is he will self-sabotage himself to then feel like he can fit in. Because often in life, when we're not strong in our own personality and understanding who we are as our like core identity, we will then depict ourselves from other people, which in turn leads to this self-sabotage type of behavior. So in order to move through that, you need to understand your identity. You need to understand the people that you spend time with and look at removing any of these limiting beliefs or unconscious things that could lead you to obviously crash and burn. Number 3. Number 3 is they believe that money is the answer. So what do I mean by this? Believing that money is the answer is that they feel, okay, well, when I get this money, then I can, do everything that I want. So often achievers are incredibly driven, and some for the right reasons, some for the wrong reasons. In this case, they get a lot of money and then they're like, okay, well, now what can I do? And they're materialistic and they say, okay, well, let's buy a flashy car. And you've seen it happen. People become, very, very, very rich, and then they splash out, spend it on lavish things because their peer group has changed. And often what happens is they feel like they need to impress that peer group. Once again, trying to fit in. So what will happen is they will do things now that they're able to, and they won't be smart, and they will spend on lavish things. And then what happens is which naturally does, income drops or it fluctuates in a way that is unstable and you're not aware of, then you become in debt. And that's why you see a lot of these very rich people, they suddenly have all this debt because they think that this thing will last forever. And they try and fit in with people that are suddenly above themselves. And that leads to this issue of them then, crashing and burning because of all the debt. And that's when you hear all these horrific stories of people doing incredibly well, and then the next day they lose everything. So now let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is where they're obsessed with instant gratification. Now this is something which is a huge issue in our society, but especially when it comes to very successful people. Because when you get to a certain level of, they're doing really, really well, everything's covered and they're moving forward, they're then looking for little dopamine releases that allow them to feel good. That's why you hear of so many successful people suddenly doing drugs or doing all these things, because for them it's a release. You get drug addicts, alcoholics, sex addicts, all these things that lead to them having some sort of an addiction. And it's that type of addictive personality, which often is now being ingrained into achievers, but actually everyone else, due to the world we live in now. Because, for example, if you want a book, you order it off Amazon, it arrives the next day. If you want to download an app, you download it, it's done within a minute. If you want to play a game on your phone, you can download it and download the game. Dating, you can swipe right, meet someone, and then meet up with them. It's fascinating how much things are instant these days. And if we go back to an experiment, so they had this marshmallow experiment, which they did with children. You may or may not have heard this, but this is really interesting. And what they did is they sat some children down, and then they put them in a room by themselves and said, okay, we're going to give you a marshmallow. Now, if you can wait 5 minutes, we'll give you another marshmallow, or you can choose to eat it now. So what happened is these children would sit there, and then some children would go, bang, and they'd eat it. They'd eat it straight away. Other children would sit there and go, I will wait. And these people can have delayed gratification. In life, people that can have delayed gratification think long term instead of these short term things. And this is incredibly important because what achievers often do is they're looking in the short term, they're like instant gratification, and they're not having that long term perspective. And it's that long term that is key. Instead of looking for this exponential success, which is what a lot of people believe is going to happen. That's not what happens. Someone works really hard for 10 years and then suddenly they get a break, but they've done the 10 years previously. And for the people that you aspire to be like, read their stories and you'll be fascinated with how much they've worked before compared to the ability that they have now to be able to move things much faster. And the last thing is that they lose focus. This is number 5. Now, why do people lose focus when they get to the top? When they get to the top, they're like, oh yeah, I've done that, now what? And they look for these other opportunities. What happens is they spread themselves very thin and then get stressed out. When they're stressed out, spreading themselves thin, they're going to make mistakes and then they're going to just topple down. So when you start doing really well, it's important to solidify and make sure that you're focused instead of dabbling in lots of different things. And this is certainly something for myself. Like, it's very easy to do incredibly well in one field and then start dabbling in another and forgetting to really focus in the field that you've already become or starting to become a master at. Especially nowadays where people have so many different specialities, it's important to get very, very good at the one thing and move that forward. So with this in mind, when I was doing this video, and I was thinking before as well, I wanted to be able to give something to you guys that you can actually start working on, because I know you've got the videos and things like that. So I actually made something called, well, what I called the 5 to Thrive fulfillment hacks. And it's really cool. Basically, it's a PDF, it's free to download, and it will just take you through these different exercises. I've got some cool songs on there, some books, and it's just an awesome way for you to start thriving instead of surviving in life. So if you check the link below, you can access it for free. And yeah, check it out and do let me know what you think. And with that, thank you for listening to the video. I really hope you find this helpful. And do keep this in mind when you start achieving in life, because if you're watching these videos, you're into your self-development and you're definitely going to achieve. And now it's just making sure that you don't fall off track when you do. So thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.